alongside my parents trying to raise awareness about the situation in Tibet. And it didn't used to be like it is now, where people know. We used to get asked quite often, what was Tibet, where could I get a free Tibet, things like that. We've come a long way, but back in the earliest days, Amnesty members were always there, before we really even had a Tibet movement. Somehow there was always an Amnesty member at the talk my parents were giving in a church basement to 20 people in the 80s. And in a way, and knowing what Amnesty has done for people in Tibet and the idea of shining a light in the darkness, I've heard the stories, the testimonies from Tibetans themselves. Paul Nyatso, 33 years in prison in Tibet, released largely because of Amnesty. So thank you, first of all. And I'm just going to talk about my experience of building the movement as a part of the Tibet movement and as a leader in the Tibet movement and the student movement. And I think for me it all starts with being young and just hearing the message of the Dalai Lama, a message of interconnectedness of all things and people, of universal responsibility, of the importance of being a global citizen. And when I was young, that made a lot of sense to me at a gut level. And it was important to me, his message always, these basic values of whether Tibetan Buddhism or just being a good person in the world. And I watched growing up as his message and the Tibetan people's valiant fight has drawn people from all over the world to build a movement. We're only 6 million Tibetans, tiny population. And there's really no government in the world that will go to bat for us, really. But people do. Global citizens, citizens of conscience, especially young people, have come from every corner and every country to be our movement, to be our force. And that's what we have. We're a pressure issue. Really all we have is Tibetans leading from the inside and never giving up. And the global citizens of conscience who heed that call of universal responsibility and the interconnectedness of all things, who come and stand side by side with us and work. But it's not enough just to do the work. Of course, we need to be strategic. We need to be visionaries, but we need to be well trained. And that is, I think, what the last 10 years have been for us in the Tibet movement, and especially as Students for a Free Tibet. It's like we have the heart, we have the passion, but in order to be able to seize the moment when it arrives, in order to make the most of any campaign, and we're fighting a formidable force, we must be well trained, we must be strategic, and for me as a Tibetan, that doesn't come naturally. We've been trained by our partners, by these amazing collaborations, by friends, whether in the Ruckus Society or Rainforest Action Network or Forest Ethics or Greenpeace, all of these wonderful environmental organizations, human rights, social justice organizations have come sort of, I feel like, filled in all sides of us and helped. We've said we want to learn. How do we do this? And we have the heart and the vision and the hope. But these other organizations have come in and helped train us, especially a lot of young Tibetans living in the US and India, in Europe, all over. And so with these partners and with these collaborations, we've been trained a lot in direct action, campaign strategy. We do these trainings every year where it's learning how to hang a banner. It's also learning how to be a nonviolent force to be reckoned with. If we're going to fight and win using nonviolent means, we better be really good at what we do. And 7 years ago, really 8 years ago, we started fighting this Olympics campaign. And all the Olympics campaign really was about was we knew China was going to be in the international spotlight. And we knew they were getting much better at public relations and propaganda and trying to present themselves as a kinder, gentler regime in Beijing. And somehow Tibetans were happy under Chinese rule. So we knew we had to make the most of 2008, seize that spotlight and put it on Tibet. Human rights abuses in China too, the need for freedom and democracy in China, But for us, how do we have the voice of 6 million Tibetans be heard in this moment? And all of our partners, all of these people came together with us at the right moment. Tibetans inside Tibet seized the moment. They risked everything to speak up.
Got seized.
And then we were ready, because we've been preparing and planning and working with these amazing partners in collaboration for the past 7 years, training to do direct actions and things that could help us seize the moment, seize the spotlight. And we're a long way from attaining our goal of freedom and human rights for the Tibetan people. But all of these partners, this force, is still building. And I think we're there, we're ready to work, especially now in this country, in this beautiful moment of possibility. We're ready to work alongside our friends in collaboration on issues of climate change and all of these very important, pressing issues that show us again how we're all interconnected. We just had friends in our office who were here for an environmental conference working on climate change and forestry issues, and I was just at a conference about climate change on the Tibetan Plateau and how the rate at which the change is happening up there and the glaciers are melting, and again, the message, back to the message of the Dalai Lama, and how, or just of this idea of global citizens, the interconnectedness of all things, we have to work together. And so I feel in a way like we're an example of how you can work and be successful, how we need to be open, we need to learn from each other, but also with this common value, these common values and beliefs that I think we all share. Whatever the political mandates, whatever the differences in perhaps our approach at times or our issues, we all come back to this same foundation that the Dalai Lama spoke about, that I heard about as a young child. And I just want to end with this idea that there's so much possibility, there's so much opportunity and more work that needs to be done. There's also, of course, great challenges, and I think the only way we can address them is side by side and in solidarity with each other in our work and our lives and our various issues. And I see that when I look at Zimbabwe and I look at Darfur, especially as a Tibetan, and I see the great challenges posed by the Chinese government in Burma, in Tibet. And I know you're working on some of these issues, so there are great challenges, but I do believe, I have seen now in the last 10 years how we can be successful. And as a Tibetan, the Chinese government is one of the most powerful forces on earth. And 60 years later, 6 decades on, 6 million Tibetans are still alive, still fighting. And I think that we're an example of how that strength, those values, and tenacity can get you through. So thank you for the opportunities.